Hi, everyone. Hi, Candid Culture. How are you doing? Thank you guys for joining us. I am joined by Chris Natha. She is a life coach. Is it Dozier? Am I pronouncing it right?
DeRosier.
DeRosier, shoot.
Mhm.
Because I like to get the names right, y'all. And it's important to get the names right. So we're going to be talking about the challenge of forgiveness tonight. Let's keep it light. I see Kimberly in there. I really want to keep this a fun conversation, but these conversations can get kind of tough, but we're going to have a good time. Okay. So yeah. So, and also Chris Natha I had the pleasure of talking to her about a month or so ago about the challenge of no. And I just want to keep this series going in our mental health, forum, because it's important. We talked after the show, Chris Napa, and we had some heart to heart. When we stay around, just like in Kojo's show, we stay around after the show.
Mhm.
Woo. so
Yeah.
so we found out that we had some things in common. So I was like, I got to bring you on for our next show. So I really want to talk about this. So the challenge of forgiveness, some of us, especially Black women, we have, come through trauma. We've come through childhood trauma or trauma in adulthood. And that leads to how we deal in our next relationships. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
was reading up on this, and it said somewhere that if you don't forgive, you are a prisoner of your own trauma. Like, can you talk about that? People that have difficulty forgiving, being prisoners of their own trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First off, thank you for having me. I love our chats. So thank you for having me back. But yes, I would agree that when you don't forgive, you are a prisoner because everything you do is from the lens of that hurt, right? When you
Mm.
get into another relationship, whether it's romantic, friendship, you're either guarded, you're scared, you're not completely vulnerable. Why? Because of what happened, right? And we get it. You learn from past situations and you use that in your current interactions and relationships. However, you don't want that to almost hold you hostage so that you aren't able to fully love or fully um, be, right? And so, yes, I do agree that you can be held hostage. I heard my pastor say something recently, which I thought was amazing. He said, forgiveness is the only medicine that does not have any side effects.
Mm.
And I thought about it for a while and I was like, wow, forgiveness is the only medicine that does not have any side effects. So it is not an easy thing to do, okay? But it sets us free. And I think a lot of times when you are on the receiving end of the offense, you are justified in your unforgiveness. You have reason to be mad, right? You have reason to say, he tried me, she tried me, they hurt me. So I'm going to hold this grudge. They deserve it, rightfully so. However, you deserve to live a life with that weight off of your shoulders. You deserve that too, right? And so it's less about trying to make them pay, more about you really fully living your life.
I love that. At the same time, that's very interesting. I want to go back to something you said in the beginning. You said uh, now we're going walking from a place of that hurts. So is it like an open wound, an open sore? So if I meet a new man and I haven't fully forgiven whatever if I've issues I've had in the past, whatever he says to me, I'm working from that hurts. I'm working from an open wound or an open sore.
Definitely it could that could
Mm.
that's a huge possibility because it's a bit unresolved in you and it might you may not For instance, if you're, let's say you have triggers, right? You may or may not know what they are. But when something happens, based on the way that you respond, based on the way that, and the way you respond is verbal and nonverbal. You may not say something, but your body may react because your brain is saying, this is familiar. This is familiar. We have to protect ourselves, right? And so it's like, I'm shutting down. I'm shutting down. I'm pulling back because this looks like something that I've dealt with before. So because I feel like I know how this is going to end, I'm shutting it down because this time I'm going to protect myself.
Wow, I have some other questions, y'all, but this is actually taking me into a little piece. Are you watching Mavs this season? Are you watching?
I
Okay,
am.
so so I don't want to take it to the big catastrophe. I wanted to go take it back. Our friend, or not, or our not friend, she had a small. She looked like she was being attacked by bees, a swarm of bees, sitting on the patio with her husband, and it was something he said that she just started. She just got up and she's like, I can't," and she started screaming. It was like a visceral reaction to whatever miscommunication. We all agree that he has communication issues.
Mm-hmm.
That he, but whatever it was, almost like a visceral reaction, like you said, your body reacts, and that took me to to seeing her reaction last night, and I thought, or 2 nights ago, and I thought, wow, like what's wrong with her, and if somebody else does not know your history and does not know your trauma, they're they're just going to sit there and look at you like, what's wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? So I'm not even talking about the big blow up. I'm talking about the small, when a conversation, you and I are having a conversation and I just start reacting like, and literally, I think that there's a switch that can go off in your head that nobody else knows about. Can you speak about that? Yeah, this switch that like that you're working from that trauma, like you said, you're working from that hurts, and you don't, they're having a conversation. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And I think that all she heard was, I don't want you.
Hmm.
I think there was a big chunk of that conversation. Granted, the conversation didn't make a lot of sense. I didn't understand breaking up to make up to divorce to being together. I didn't get it. However, even though I didn't get it, my response would have just been so chill. Because in my brain, I would have been like, we're breaking up anyway. So I'd have been like, okay.
Hmm.
Right? That's my response. But I feel as though all she heard or processed, because you could give a message, but the way it's received can be completely different than the way you meant it. Even though you are saying words, this is what I said, and someone's interpreting that as something else, right?
Yes.
Instead of just exactly what you said, right? Because if we're honest, we create stories. Let's be honest, everybody. We have stories in our mind already. We have stories. And I'm going to come back to this scenario. For instance, let's say a woman has a crush on a man and the man may not reciprocate, right?
Hmm.
Her thought could automatically go to, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I'm not pretty enough. I'm not skinny enough. I need to do all these things to my body or my hair, all these things. And he never said that. He never, like, he, all he said was, well, guys are really good about, like, they don't really,
It's
they're good about, they don't like to hurt people's feelings most of the time,
right.
unless they're a jerk. But most, so they're like, they'll either kind of like, okay, get quiet and slowly kind of get distant. Like they don't like to say, I don't like, I don't like you, like
Right.
women do, right? So, but yeah, but women can take that, internalize it, and say it's because of this reason why I'm not wanted or I'm not good enough. Where that conversation never really happened, but it's happening in her mind.
Yes.
And so we have stories created, and I'm sure with Michaela, she has stories. She has abandonment issues. So her story is nobody wants me. Everyone leaves. Remember the guys who mysteriously moved out of the state. So
Killing
everyone
her.
leaves me, right? And so here's another man who is even my husband, and he too wants to leave me. And so
Right.
I think that she just reacted. Um, so that's scary, but I think that's what happened. That was a trigger for her.
I
And
want to
so,
go. Go
oh, I
ahead.
was just going to say, her in her mind, her way of protecting herself is pushing people away.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave. But inside, I don't want you to go. Where are you going? Stay. You just told me to, because people are going to do what you tell them to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
know that people do that in real life, in relationships. Just leave. I don't want you. You don't have to be here. Guys, if that's not how you really feel, don't say it. Because
Yes.
one day somebody's going to walk out and not come back.
But not come back, and they're
Yeah.
going to literally leave. And I want to go to the big blow up, because I was actually explaining this in one of my other lives, and I said, when he's saying, my only problem is with you. Yes, he's saying marriage is. I had no issue. I knew marriage was going to be hard, but it's extremely hard with you. She's translating it as, my husband hates me. He doesn't like me. He thinks I'm ugly. I'm a horrible person. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she is mind reading and catastrophizing all over that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my
Yes.
gosh. And that, the big blow up, when he's talking to her in the bed, I said, that's not what he's saying, but it doesn't matter. Anything, that's why she cut him off. She didn't hear, she'd already blown up in her head. She'd already gone from 0 to 200.
Mm-hmm.
And she mind read and said, my husband hates me, get out. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, just stop and just think first. But when we're working from a place of trauma in new relationships, um that's all we can do. That's no, that's not all we can do. We have to be in another place. We have to be better. I think she's frozen, y'all. Mean what you say and say what you mean. Hey, Dr. Nwandi.
Yes, definitely.
Um,
Mean
so
what you
yeah,
say and say what you mean for sure.
yeah. So the next thing, is there stages? Is there, like, you know how there's stages of grief? Are
Mhm.
there like stages of forgiveness?
I would say so. I would say that oftentimes we are told, just get over it, just move on. It's not always that easy. It's really nice to say. It sounds good. Sounds like the good old Christian thing to do. Um, but oftentimes we have to work through forgiveness depending on the largeness of what's going on or what took place. Sometimes, depending on what happened, okay, we can move forward. We had a conversation. Sometimes it's like, I can't talk to you. I never want to see you. And I have to really work through this in my heart. And it takes time because there's steps, because there's also like stages to healing. So with the forgiveness, you have to actually, now this sounds interesting, but you have to like prep your heart for forgiveness. You have to get your heart to a state where it is open, willing to forgive. Because when you are hurt, especially at the beginning, the word forgiveness, you'll almost curse someone out. Like if someone tell you need to, you're like, listen, if you don't want me to be mad with you too, don't even bring that up. Okay. I'm justified. I'm going to be mad as long as I want. I don't want you pushing me to forgive. I'm right, they're wrong. So there's stages to it. But yes, you can definitely prepare your heart to forgive. And I'll give you an idea. For example, when you start understanding why healing and forgiveness is important. So when you start understanding why it's so important for you, how it's more beneficial for you to forgive, that's a good place to be. That takes time. It looks different for everyone. When you start to address your inner pain, you're able to articulate what exactly happened, how much it hurt you. And you can sit down with a trusted counselor or with a therapist and really start unpacking what's going on. When you even develop empathy for the person who hurt you, that's a whole nother stage, right? Which sounds crazy, but I know people who don't have the best relationship with their mother, right? For example, but it wasn't until after some time they began to see their mother as a woman, and began to really tap into her past and look at how she was raised, all the stuff that she's been through. And they were able to actually have empathy for their mother who hurt them because their mother knows nothing aside from herself. And so then they began to have empathy. Then it's like, okay, how can I use this pain for a greater purpose? So there's stages. And then who knows, God can birth the ministry out of the pain, the very pain that you're experiencing. And then, of course, having support, forgiving yourself is a stage. And then, of course, your heart is open to forgive that person.
So you just took us into my next subject. Forgiving when you have been now you're an adult child of abuse, and forgiving that maybe that parental figure, or that um even if they weren't the one that forget that projected the abuse onto you, um yeah, forgiving them, and they were the ones that were supposed to keep you safe. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
um how do you transition that? Let's talk about it.
If I'm honest with you, 100%, I have experienced this personally. Um, and I don't mind sharing this because I shared it before. I was molested at 7 by a neighbor who remained a neighbor, period, who is still a neighbor, okay, of my parents to this day. Got molested at 7, didn't say anything till 25. So the 18-year gap of me just being internally frustrated and mad, and one day I'm happy, next day I'm sad, and I hated this person all of a sudden, all those changes I was going through. I was even resentful to my parents for not protecting me, and they didn't even know. Like, this is how deep it went. And I went years like upset at them, and they had no idea what happened. It doesn't make sense, but it made sense in my mind, because all I knew is that at 7 I couldn't protect myself. That wasn't my job, right? And so it was hard for a long time. So I definitely can relate to this question. It took time. It took years. It first took me to have courage to sit down with my parents and come to them from a place of honesty, not anger so much, because time had gone by, but say, listen, this is what happened. And I was even mad at you for it, even though you didn't know. I just was, right? I want to release that because I actually love you and I want us to be okay. Um, but I'm not over what happened. So I still am holding a grudge to this person. And so just working through that. But what helped me and what I can encourage others is, and this is not always easy to do, it took some years actually, separating, this is hard, separating my parents from their mistake, from their shortcoming. That's how I'm able to have a loving relationship with my imperfect parents. That's worked for me, because though they didn't know, once they knew, for some reason I almost wanted them to go backwards and be really mad and do something. And when they didn't react the way I thought they should have, it broke my heart, Crystal, because I felt like, do something, blow up the neighborhood, like go kill them, like, just do something. And they're looking at me at 25 like, our heart's broken. So first of all, you have had 18 years, give us a minute to process, right? Because you just telling us. So I was like, true, that's true. So we let us wrap our head around this. Second, we're not going to do that, right? And I was like, what? You're not going to, you got to, you have to, like, you got to protect the 7-year-old me. The 25-year-old can fight. But I need you to go protect the 7-year-old. And they didn't react the way I wanted to. So then here comes the hurt again. Oh, I'm so mad. I'm not going to talk to them. But I was really convicted because I was like, outside, and this is hard too, to separate things, right? But I was like, outside of this situation, my parents love me. It's not a doubt. They got my back. They're imperfect, but they got my back. Do I want to risk never talking to them, them possibly one day passing on and all this stuff, and us not having this relationship because I want to be right? So I had to, it was hard, but I was like, you know what? I just want my parents. And that was hard, guys. I'm not saying it's easy. So I had to work through that. And so I forgave them, and we would have conversations about my feelings, but it was like little by little. I couldn't. I noticed they didn't have the range for this conversation. This is a lot. Caribbean parents, hello, this is a lot. So I had to have it in like bite sizes. So every couple of months, I'm like, I want to share my feelings, and they're like, oh, go ahead. And I'm like, I was hurt when you didn't do this, but I didn't come to them yelling. I didn't come to them screaming. I had to calm myself because I actually wanted a result, right? So I had to come like, I was hurt. This really broke my heart. I don't think you understand how this hurt me. I didn't feel like you stood up for me here. And they were like, really? I was like, this is how I feel. Don't be mad. This is how I feel. And they were like, well, I'm sorry about how you feel. And I had to like realize that is your resolve, Chris Natha. That is it. That's what you're going to get from them. They're not going to go and kill them, even though you want them to. This is the resolve. So I was like, you know what? Whatever bit of um, justification, whatever bit of revenge or whatever that I felt like I wanted them to do, I had to really give that to God. That's just personal. I had to say, whatever I feel like my parents aren't doing, I have to allow God to fill that void, or I will forever be mad at them. Um, but to bring it back, it's not easy. But when you get to that, when we're talking about the healing, going through, just the healing stages, when you get to a place of having empathy, it's easier to say, maybe I can look at this a different way. Maybe I can start opening up my heart a little bit. Now, depending on who the person is, how your parent is, whether or not they're toxic, just so many different things, you decide the level in which you guys get close, if you get close. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconcile. So you have to decide, how is this going to work? I think personally, if you still have your parents living, there should be a level of respect and honor. Doesn't mean you have to be on the phone every day. Like I said, you know your parents, you know how toxic they are, if they are. So you kind of have to find your groove in that, but there should be a level of honor somewhere, or just acknowledgement, right? So I can't really tell. Like, everyone has a really different scenario with their parents. So I can't say your relationship should be like this or like that. But if you felt like you weren't protected, I get it. But I first want you to start with forgiving yourself. Whatever happened, it was not your fault. So you have to start there. Don't let, sorry to get too deep, but don't let the enemy make you feel like this is on you. No, this is not on you. So take that off of yourself. Okay. I don't care what was going on, it wasn't on you. Then, after you do that, you have to ask yourself, do I want to keep carrying the weight of unforgiveness? Because it's heavy, and there's so much more that I'm carrying already. That don't mean you have to be best friends with people you forgive. Listen, you can forgive and not reconcile the relationship to what it was. Um, Forgiveness is not the absence of pain. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Forgiveness is saying, I want to let go of this anger, this rage, because it's tearing me down. I'm not operating in the way I should operate because I'm enraged all the time. And this is not good for my soul. So this is more about me than it is about them. I can't hear you, Chris.
I
There
know.
you are.
You just said a word, and you said a lot. And you brought me back to one of our previous conversations and things that I dealt with as well, because I I was molested at age 6, and I didn't tell my parents until I was an adult, and then I said the same thing. You didn't have my back. Like, I wanted them to do something, but
Hmm.
at the same time, I'm telling them afterwards, um, and now they're different people than they were when I was 6. My mother was 36, and now she's not. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
So,
right.
um, so she's a different person now, but I want her to react or do something
Hmm.
about the 6-year old. And
Yes.
I really wanted to dive into that. And then I want to get into something else you said, but it's almost like you're still the 7-year old and I'm still the
Hmm.
6-year old.
Hmm.
And, but it's about like stunted growth. And we were just talking about Michaela, and it's almost like, who are you? You're like, she's like still whoever would that little girl that was still dealing with trauma like
Yeah,
years ago and reacting from that. So we're hurt by something, that they won't do something um, about something that they didn't have anything to do with at the time. You understand what I'm saying?
I
So that
do.
stunted growth, there's still a little 6-year-old in me that did in and that 7-year-old in you. So
Hmm.
how do we work through that because we still have that 7-year-old that wants to be treated right as a 25 and 26-year-old. You understand what I'm saying? How do we work
Absolutely.
with that? How do as especially as young Black women, how do we work with that? And how do we conduct ourselves, in this life, in dating and a mate?
I think one great thing is to first acknowledge what's going on, and which we both do, so that's good. And for anyone watching to do the same, to acknowledge that, listen, that 6 year old, that 7 year old, that 12-year old, that 15-year old, there's she's stuck a little bit. She still shows up. When someone says no, when someone says I'm not interested, she shows up. She still gets hurt. So what happens? Okay, what's the issue? What's the source of pain? Okay, is it molestation? Is it abandonment? What is it? Okay, let's go there. Let's talk about it. And being able to really unpack it and remove the shame, whatever it is, remove the shame away from it and just talk about how did you feel? Because we didn't have the language that we have now at 6 and 7. We didn't have, because if we did, we'd have been able to say what happened. We'd have been able to say this, we didn't have the language we have. So we're able to articulate this is what's going on. So being aware that, what, these are triggers for me, and becoming more and more self-aware, I think that's really important. And when you have people in your life that you feel that you can be vulnerable with, to a point where you can start taking some layers off, being able to articulate. I'm really good at articulating. Listen, this is a trigger for me. Listen, I just want you to know that this and this makes me uncomfortable. It's not about you, it's more about me. I understand that this is a trigger. I am working on it, but I do ask that you're patient with me here. And most people will, but I don't flip out. So it's about, like, how do I first acknowledge what's going on, able to articulate it with my trusted circle. Because when Michaela said to Bow, I believe, that he knows I have abandonment issues, maybe Zach does know that. I just don't know how she's articulated that to him. And maybe she doesn't have the language yet. And so part of her healing, I hope that she learns how to articulate, this makes me uncomfortable, this is a trigger for me, I don't do well in this space, right? I hope with time and everything that she'll be able to start to be able to do that. So that's definitely one thing: acknowledging, being self-aware, being able to share with the people that are closest to us, the people that we begin to really trust, that, hey, listen, I'm a work in progress. And we all are. None of us are coming in any relationship ready made. We all have kinks and stuff that we're working out. But being able to say, listen, my intentions are always good, but this could be a trigger. So I just need you to be patient with me. And another good thing that helps too, Crystal, is me knowing deep down who really has my back. And knowing that no matter what happens with me and that person, that deep knowing helps me to, one, not get offended, and two, to know they're not trying to hurt me. Now, it might have, like, hurt a little what they said, because maybe that's a trigger, right? Maybe I need to grow in that area. Maybe I'm convicted for a reason. But their intention is not to hurt me. And so that helps me a lot not to be offended, because people in my life, I've given them permission to call me out. And so when it's uncomfortable, I'm like, but I know she loves me. So this is
Mhm.
supposed to help me. So I'm like, okay, tell me about myself. Go ahead. And they do lovingly. And I'm grateful for that, because it helps me. I can take the information and say, I want to do better here. And since you saw this, can you help me? Can you help me grow here? You may
It's
do this better. Can you help me? Right. So,
right. It's constant self-talk. It's that
mm-hmm.
constant self-talk that okay, that was a trigger, let me let me pull back. And you know, it's something you just mentioned, what Michaela said to Val, that he knows that I have abandonment issues. But my immediate thought when she said that was, just because he knows it doesn't mean that he knows how to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that how he's going to
Very
deal with it
true.
is right. So you have to know that and receive it and say that you still can't be that person that's going to flip, and you still can't say, well, he knows this and he should be. I said that doesn't mean that he's going to be able to
Yeah,
um deal with it in the right way. So,
absolutely.
and we as people that are working through things and through our traumas, we have to know that not everybody's going to receive it the right way, especially the
Hmm.
first time. So we have to know that and understand it. That's immediately I thought, just because he knows that doesn't mean, or just because he heard it, just because you may have told him that once, doesn't mean that he's okay. I accept it. I'm willing to be there for you and work through it the right way and give you the right answers.
Absolutely. We can
Um,
all agree that he isn't the best at expressing what he's
right.
trying. I knew what he was trying to say. Just I think he's not the best at. However, it definitely doesn't warrant the reaction. But with Michaela, I hope that she understands. And for anybody who knows anyone who has blow ups or reacts in a huge way, or who reacts that way themselves and think it's still cute, I'm here to tell you it's not. There's nothing cute about it. And also, I want you to know that your response has value, but your reaction has consequences. Your response has value, but your reaction has consequences. We are not children. You go out here acting crazy, you can go to jail. It can get physical. Thank God it did. I mean, like the other way around. Thank God it didn't. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful because it can go so left, so
So
left.
left so quickly, so left so quickly. I really want to talk about this. You said forgiving ourselves. I want to dive into that, forgiving ourselves, because as children that have been through it, and as you know, that we blame ourselves.
Hmm.
Like we could have stopped it, and
Yes.
and I really want to talk about that, because there's no way that that we could have done anything to stop it. And but then there's a psychological, there's a manipulation involved as well. So then we start to self-doubt ourselves as adults, and let's talk about that a little bit, that blaming ourselves.
Absolutely. 100%. Usually, when some type of childhood trauma happens, especially with like young children, there's a lot of mental manipulation that takes place. It happened to me as well. And so, for a long time, I thought that telling my mother would be a bad thing because it would be hurting her. So, the thought was, well, I don't want to hurt her. So, I have to bear this pain and this anguish alone. And I did that till 25 when I finally was like, oh my God, I've been lied to. That's not the case. But for a long time, I believed that. I was like, I want to tell her. She'd be like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I can't tell her because it would hurt her. Who am I to hurt her? Right. And so just held on and held on and held on. And I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, I was manipulated, and it took a long time to figure that out. But with forgiving yourself, I want everyone watching to know that you are so loved. You are so loved. There's absolutely nothing that you could do for someone to hurt you, especially as a child, that you felt like you deserved it because you didn't do something right. No, absolutely not. You did nothing wrong deserving of the offense. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So my prayer is that you do forgive yourself. You start to really see yourself the way God sees you, not see yourself through the lens of your abuser, anyone who's taken advantage of you, but really seeing yourself through the eyes of the King. You are God's child. You are a jewel in His crown, and it was not your fault. It was not your fault. And that takes
So
time. That takes time,
yes,
Crystal. Sometimes people struggle with that for a long time.
honestly, that's one of the ones that takes the most time. It's almost like forgiving someone else, and you have to do what the tools you said earlier, which is, you know, who were they when that was going on? Who were, you know, you have to forgive that person who are hurting you, you know. But when you have to forgive yourself, that's even, that does take a lot. I feel like that takes a little longer. That takes
Absolutely.
longer to forgive yourself and to know that there's nothing that you could have done, and that you're a good person. So there are actually 8 stages, I don't want to say stages, 8 challenges of self forgiveness. So I want to go through a couple of them. And the one that kind of got me is that you will be seen as selfish. And you just said something. You know, who am I to, you know, hurt my mother? Who am I? But at the same time, we're her daughter. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
talk about that selfishness and that feeling of guilty, feeling guilty.
Feeling guilty when is that feeling guilty when I'm not forgiving?
Yes. Can So it says guilt can be seductive, a well deserved punishment. Like we're, you know, we're taking on that punishment. We're taking on whatever
Mm.
hurt, and we want to just keep that hurt with us.
Oh yeah, definitely. I felt like I don't know if everyone feels like that, but even though my mother's my mother, I always felt like I needed to protect her. I don't know what that was about. Ever since I was little, she was always ill, so I always felt like it's okay. I'll be strong. I'll be strong for the both of us. And so, like when my abuser um, said, you know, like if you tell her this, this will make her even more sick. It could even kill her. You don't want your mom to die, right? And I'm like, no. He's like, well, you can't ever tell her. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my. And in this moment in my life, like my mom was my best friend. So I tell her everything. So I was like, oh my God, I'm keeping a secret. We're not supposed to keep secrets from each other. So it's just this whole thing, but a lot of guilt. And then when I told them at 25, even though this was still breaking my heart, there was guilt that my telling them is now breaking their heart. Absolutely insane. So I always kept carrying this responsibility of I need to protect their heart, protect their feelings. And I called a girlfriend and she said, I'm going to tell you something you're not going to like. And I said, what is it? She's like, you just need to let their heart break. I was like, what? Like I was like, what? She goes, your heart's been breaking for 18 years. You're going to have to let their heart break. And I was like I didn't even tell them everything at first because I was like, I can't give them too much detail. It'll break their heart. She goes, let their heart break. Stop carrying everything by yourself. And I sat there all night and gave them very play by play details of what was in my mind. And they were like overwhelmed, like, okay, that's enough. I said, no, it's not enough. I have to tell, I'm not going to stop till I tell you everything. I'm not carrying this alone anymore.
Mm.
So sorry, but here it is. And I told the truth and I got that off me. I mean, I felt so free. And then I started going around testifying. They were like, girl, what happened? I'm like, listen, let me tell you what happened to me. But God is so good because now I have my voice and I'm not going to shut up. Okay. But it was from a place of empowerment, not so much talking bad about the person, even though I don't care for them, but it was more so like I can talk now. I'm not ashamed. I didn't do anything. So it took some time to feel freedom in that space, but there was a lot of guilt around even allowing people who love me to kind of carry that burden with me.
It's almost like a weight was lifted off of you.
Mm-hmm.
When you were able to share it with the two of them, then you're like, okay, let me, like you said, go in. That's my testimony now, and you don't know who you're helping. When you start to like unleash that, you don't know who you're helping, and you don't know who else you're
Absolutely.
freeing. And you're right. That's exactly what happened to me. I felt so guilty that I was hurting her, that I didn't know what to do. But then I also was burdened with the other feeling of you didn't protect me and you didn't have
Mm-hmm.
my back. So we as children, we were holding all of that. We were having adult conversations with ourselves, adult issues as children. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what happens when you've been abused, and that's what happens when you're taking on a lot more than you are mentally and emotionally capable of taking on.
Yes. Yes. You said it perfectly. It's so heavy. And you can relate. It's so heavy, and you're thinking like that level of weight on a child, that alone, plus all the other stuff you go through in your teenage years, adolescent, just regular teenager stuff, young adult stuff. But that, it
Yes.
could break some people. I mean, yeah, it could break some people.
Chris Mather, go out and come back in. You keep freezing on my end. I don't know if everybody else is seeing you freeze, but you're freezing on
Okay.
my end. Go out and come back in.
Okay.
Um, and then, so y'all, thank you guys for joining me. We are talking about the challenge of forgiveness, and Chris Nathan and I we had bonded over some things last episode, and I'm so glad to have her back. We're talking about forgiving ourselves at this point. We're talking about sometimes, as adults, we go through like our own self doubt, and what she did, she turned her self doubt into her now being a life coach, and now being, turned that into a positive, and that's what I love about her. So we're gonna be talking about like that part of it, and how that self doubt can also be you're gaining yourself. You're turning yourself into who you really want to be, after after that. So okay, I got you now. Okay. But the weird thing is I could hear you clearly, so I didn't want you to stop you from talking. So so we were talking about forgiving ourselves, and now I really want to talk about this next one, which is you'll doubt yourself, doubting yourself, and then you're gaining yourself back. So I really want to talk about being that, forgiving what happened to you as a child, growing from that, and then how you can still doubt yourself as an adult, and growing from that afterwards and gaining yourself. Go ahead. I know that
Doubt.
you have a book, and I also know that you did that. Now that you're a life coach, but I want to talk about that afterwards. Doubting
Oh,
yourself, like
sure,
how did that
sure.
doubting yourself?
Doubting yourself. Well, you could definitely be double guessing, like always, like double guessing, triple guessing, like I don't know if I'm good enough. That could be one thing. I know one thing that I dealt with at an adolescent, which I was embarrassed about for a long time, but it was just the wrong thinking because I was manipulated. Because when you're molested, you're touched, right? And that was like my introduction to like any type of physical intimacy, you know, even though I didn't understand what that was. So over time, I remember thinking that the way a male is supposed to express he likes me is by touching. And so I remember like having crushes on these young boys at school, and I'd be like, "You don't like me." And they're like, "Why do you think that?" I'm like, "You don't try to touch me." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "You've never tried to, like, you're so scary." I'm like, you don't find me pretty? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, why does these people act like I'm crazy? So like this went on for a long time, but I was embarrassed to like ask another girl or an older girl, like, am I tripping or what's going on? So for a long time, I was like, this doesn't make sense. He doesn't like me. He stands way over there. He sits way over there. But it was just kids being kids. Like,
Hmm.
kids in middle school, you're still scared of each other. You still have cooties, right? But I just was like, he don't like me. He's not trying to touch me because I kept connecting touch with like or something or
Hmm.
desire. So that happened for a long time. So it was a lot of self doubt. I kept thinking maybe it's because I'm not pretty enough. Maybe it's because I'm not skinny enough. Okay, well I'll change this, and then to the point where I even developed an eating disorder, like early in high school, because I was like, they don't like me. The boys don't like me. And what do I have to do? When they did, they just were being boys,
Right.
and respectful. So it definitely caused a lot of doubt. And I just started acting out in so many ways.
But you know what you just said is that we take it on. We take on something that has nothing to do with us.
Hmm.
And that's
Absolutely.
we're taking on something that has nothing to do with us, and it could be, and that's what happens and now that, like, I've been in therapy for a while now, and I have to write out, and you have to do that self-talk and say, you know whatever happened at work, that it probably had nothing to do with you. What's the what's
Yes.
the evidence that proved that? Because like you said, you developed an eating disorder after, I didn't have an eating disorder, but I just had different, like, not anxiety, but just I get inside of my head a lot, and I just have to, like, talk it out and stuff. So
Hmm.
like, you'd have like anxiety or different, you're uncertain about certain things, and but I'm also very courageous. Like, I'll take a risk in a second, but at the same time, but if only if it's my risk. I deal with these mental conversations that I have with myself, because because you've been manipulated at such a young age, you feel like you can't make a decision. Like, you have to go through, and it's not true. It has nothing. In some
You overthink.
scenarios,
Yeah.
yeah, you overthink. Absolutely, I'm very guilty of that. In some scenarios, like you said, that had nothing to do with you. It had nothing to do with you. So that's something that, when we deal with childhood traumas and having to forgive ourselves, and we have to have
Hmm.
that constant self-talk with ourselves.
Absolutely. Crystal, we are more alike than I thought. We think the same. I've been through that and I overthink a lot. And I have a lot of self-talk. Like I have to talk things out loud. I
Hmm.
can't just think them. Like I have to say, it's okay. Even when I feel like I have anxiety, like I'll get stressed and I'm like, Chris Natha, nothing has happened for you to feel overwhelmed. Take a moment. It's okay. Listen, you're fine. You're safe. You're okay. You're safe. And I have to have these conversations and I take my deep breath and I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. Relax.
That is absolutely that is
Yeah.
absolutely true. I have to do that.
Mhm.
It's like, oh gosh, Crystal, it's okay. It's no big deal. You'll be okay. And like,
Don't
and
take it personal, Chris Natha. Yep.
that's
It's
so
not
funny.
about you. It's not, don't take it personal. So now it's like most things now, you have to directly say it to me for me to take it personal. Now I'm like, oh, she's not mad about me. She probably had a bad day. Like cause I'm like, I'm not creating another story. Like,
Exactly. Oh, this has nothing to do with me. I've got
no
enough.
more
I've got
story.
enough. I'm talking to myself enough. So, oh, this has nothing to do with me. You
Right.
have to. You have to. And the weird thing is, like I said, I worked in LA. Like, I had to have a thick skin, and sometimes you have to have that your own thick skin about certain scenarios. Like, just let it roll off your back. Just water off a duck's back. And then your ability to gain yourself when you know that what you're not that trauma. You're not, in that, when you finally not just forgive yourself, but forgive the other person, or forgive. And I really want to touch back what you said earlier a little deeper. Not forgive the person that wronged you, but get past in a certain way. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think I'll ever forgive him, but to not let it burden the rest of your life and everything you
Yes.
do, and affect you. That's the word.
Mm-hmm.
And affect everything you do. That's really where I really want to get to. Yeah, how did you get to a point? And not I understand, talking to your mother, talking to your parents about it, that was a help because you felt comfortable speaking out, but
Mm-hmm.
not letting it affect you, and forgiving him, and then forgiving yourself. Because
Yeah. What really helped me was me finding purpose in my pain. That helped me a lot. I used to journal. Well, I still journal, but I used to journal like so regularly at that time because I was always a shy kid. Funny enough, I was very, very shy as a child, but I knew how to write. Like I would sit and my mother would say, like, you want to play outside? And I'm like, I want to go write in my journal. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And so till this day, it's so funny now that I think about it. She'd be like, what do you want as a gift? And she'd buy all these, dolls, and I loved them. But I really wanted composition books. I wanted like journals and like planners. Like that's the stuff I loved even back then. And till this day, you give me a planner, I am so excited. But I started writing, and it was like journal entries, and then eventually they became a book that I wrote. I compiled everything, and just it was just my heart at that time. 10 years ago, it was that what was going on in my heart at the time, and it's so crazy because the first chapter ended up being about being molested, and it was called He Touched Me, and that was like literally almost me coming out to people that were so close to me that were like, I never knew. And I'm like, nobody knew. My mom just found out a week ago. Like, no, I mean, friends who were like walking beside me for years were like, you never said anything. I'm like, nobody knew. This was something I held close to my chest. But finally, I was free. And I remember writing it, feeling so vulnerable. And I remember at the end, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have wrote this. Maybe I should have kept this. But I believe that God gave me peace about it. And I remember that night when we had the launch and all my friends and family bought the book. And I was like, Chris, you are so emotionally naked. You have told everybody what has happened. And the text messages and the calls I was getting that night, like, oh my God, Chris Natha, this chapter has set me free. I've been through something similar. I'm about to go have a talk with my mom. I'm about to go talk with my people. Like, I've been holding this secret too. And it's like, first of all, so many people had gone through it, but also I realized this isn't about me. This isn't about me. This is so much bigger than me. And so that for me, I felt like though I had been through something traumatic, I'm grateful God has kept me and he was able to use that um, to really just encourage other people. So for me, that was something that I felt like helped find myself. And that just trickled into me doing so many other things that I'm doing today. So that's pretty much for me how I felt like I found me.
Wow, you and I are a lot alike because I love journaling. I love like getting notebooks. That's one
Mm-hmm.
I love doing that, and I'm a writer as well. But something you said, that fear of being emotionally naked, and I think that when people can't forgive, or they have they're challenged with the ability to forgive because it's difficult. It is. It's difficult to just, because you feel like if you forgive, you're saying whatever that person's done to you, then it was okay for them to do that. That's not true. And it doesn't make what happened to you okay. It doesn't make that all right. But when you finally forgive, it leaves yourself emotionally naked. And I think that there is a fear in being emotionally naked. And when you're holding all of that anger or holding all that hurt in, then that's like it hardens you a little bit. You know what I mean? And so you can keep up that wall. So I feel like that's what keeps people in that no, I'm not going to forgive, and I'm going to hold a grudge and things like that. So that's what I've noticed. But yeah, what do you think of that emotion, being emotionally naked, that part, what you said?
I think it's necessary. It's scary. It is one of the scariest things, but I think it's so necessary to be completely open with yourself first, right? And say, listen, this is this is all of what's happened to me. But this doesn't have to be my whole story. This doesn't have to be where the story ends. There's still life in me. There's still breath in me. Like, my story will continue. That situation doesn't define us, right, Crystal? It is a part of our story, but it doesn't have to be the story. And it's definitely not the end, right? We're doing so much great work now, and we'll be doing greater work and even more great work. And so will the ladies or gentlemen and or gentlemen that are watching, that you will be able to move forward from the trauma, the pain, the hurt. And so I don't want you to feel like that's it, this is my story and that's it. No, there's so much more for you. But you have to be open, because forgiveness is an act of faith. It really is.
Absolutely.
It's an act of faith. It's like, I am trusting that I can get on the other side of this, and you can. You can. I am a testimony that you can. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect. There's still some work God is doing in my heart, right? But I'm definitely not where I was 10 years ago.
Were you ever able to confront that person that hurt you?
Um, Strangely enough, I saw him a few times in the last few years, but not confront about what he did. It was actually a really emotional, um, emotional moment. I actually like spazzed out with, and I didn't know that that was going to be, you sometimes you don't know, like, what comes up, because I hadn't seen him for so long. So I was like, whatever. And then all of these old emotions just came up. Words were said. They weren't nice words. And
Hmm.
that's when I realized, oh, we got some more work to do on this healing journey.
Yeah.
So I definitely have some more work to do. But I don't have no interest in ever like talking to him or getting him to admit, because that was another thing he kept saying that that wasn't true. So I don't have no interest in that. Yeah, I just think I'm more focused on the work within myself.
And you know what? Okay, and I feel like this might be our last, because this is a good place to kind of wrap it up, because sometimes when you've been hurt, even hurt like we have, or someone else, it may not have been an abuse, but
Hmm.
somebody that hurts you in another way. I don't know, stole some money, whatever. Sometimes they're not going to admit it, and
Yes.
sometimes,
Yes.
and I would want to get into that. You have to be okay with
Hmm.
them not admitting it. Like, talk about that, because that is something I do have that here. That um, what if you confront the person and they're not willing to take responsibility for their actions, um, or the part that they took in what happened to harm you? Go
That's
ahead.
a great question, Crystal. I think it's important that we decide ahead of time that we're going to heal anyway. So, regardless, if you want to man up or woman up, I'm going to heal regardless. You want to still lie, I'm going to heal regardless. You want to act like you have amnesia and Alzheimer's all of a sudden, I'm going to heal regardless. So that has to be a decision that you make. You're going to heal regardless. And that's a decision that I've made, and I want everyone to make that same decision, to get to that place where you decide, I'm going to heal. I'm going to work through this for myself, right? I'm not doing them any favors. This is about me. And I got to a place where I talk about the situation from a place of, this is what happened, right? But also maybe to help someone else, like we're doing right now. Um I don't talk about it outside of that. Like, I don't sit and just talk bad about him. I used to, but I also realized the weight of the anger and the rage, and I got exhausted. Like, this is exhausting. And I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, I just want to move on, not move on and act like it didn't happen, but I just want to move forward. Like, I just don't want to think about this, but I want to work through it within my emotions, the trauma. I want to work on that part. So I would say is just to make a decision to heal. And you have to accept that you may not get the reaction that you dreamt about, that you hope you get. That would be beautiful, right? The ideal reaction or outcome, that may never happen. So some people heart get broken all over again because they're like, I want them to admit, I want them to react this way. They may not, but you have to make a decision. Your healing is not based on someone's reaction. Your healing is not based on whether or not they admit that they've done you wrong. Your healing, it's not up for debate. It's yours. And so make that decision, stand firm on it, and whatever you need to do to go through that process, do it. But just, you have to accept that. That's a hard truth. That's a hard truth. That person may go to the grave saying that you are a liar,
Right.
but
And
you
you,
can't get triggered every time. Oh, they're lying. This is not about proving. This is about, the truth.
right.
God knows the truth. Let that be enough. I know sometimes we have family involved. This person should have believed you. Trust me, I get it, and that's heartbreaking. But you have to make the decision. I am moving forward. I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to allow God to heal my heart. Nobody gets to hold the power on whether or not I heal from this. I've made a decision, so it has to be a really strong decision made.
I really think what you just said is so important, that if you don't forgive, you're giving them your power. Like, and you have to take that power back, and you have to hold on to that power. And even if you are a 6 or 7 year old, or even if you're a 25-year old and dealing with somebody, an ex husband or what have you, or somebody that's, it, it may not be as childhood abuse, it may be something else that you are giving them your power when you hold on to it. That is huge. And also to prep your heart for forgiveness, that is something else. I had to write that down. That's amazing, because sometimes it takes a lot of work. Not sometimes. You may think that you're there, and then you're not there.
Man, it's not. One little thing happened, you're like, that's why I can't stay. You're like, oh, okay.
Ooh, okay, I
It's
got some
it's
work to do.
yeah. It's process. It's a process for sure.
That is something that I have learned, that it is definitely a process. It is definitely not one and done and I'm over it, I'm good. No, it's gonna take a minute. It like, or you think, okay, I've worked through this. Something else 6 months later might come up, and you might, you know, be in your hometown for Thanksgiving or what have you, and things might come
Mhm.
back. And you have to constantly be giving yourselves that self talk. You
That is
constantly need
so
to be in
good.
constant prayer. Yes.
And
Yeah.
have a plan. I
Ooh.
know we don't always follow plans, but sometimes, like, let's say this person is in your family, however they hurt you. Let's say they're in your family, holidays are coming up. They you may come across this person, they may show up at the family event, right? Now you're thinking, okay, they're here, and do I now not enjoy myself because it's individuals here? Do I now have to get up and leave and not enjoy the rest of my family members? Or do I get to create boundaries and say, I'm going to be on this side of the house, or I'm going to be way over there? I don't feel like interacting too much. Or I'm in a space where if they say hello, I can say hello. Maybe that's it, but I can say hello and walk away. Whatever that looks like for you, but create a plan, because you have the power. You have the power. So make that stern decision to heal and keep pressing forward.
I love that. I want to ask you: have you ever been in a situation where you had to create a plan, a quick
Yes.
plan for yourself?
And it
So,
involved other people in my life. So I talked to them about it.
okay.
Yeah, I
So
said,
that's
listen,
okay. Uh-huh.
we may see this person. I need your support. I'm, I don't know. I don't know what I'll try to ignore it, but I don't know what that's going to do for, and they were like, I got you. And I'll make sure that if this happens, we'll get out of there. Like, so I had support, but I had to like be open to asking for help too.
That's I just came to I actually did that right then, because and I didn't know that that's what I was doing, was creating a plan.
Hmm.
Somebody was coming for a visit, and I talked to a friend about it. The same a similar situation had happened to her as a child, and she said, "Oh, you can come stay with me for the weekend. Come on, like don't And I just she said, absolutely, let's get you out of that situation.
Yeah.
And even, and it's sad, it frustrates me that even as adults that we have to have this
Hmm.
plan, but it's almost like guarding our heart. It's almost,
Yes.
it's our protection. It's not. And I said, gosh, is this childish? But it's not.
No, it's not. It's not. See, other people can look at it as childish because they're thinking, oh, here you go, living in the past. No, I'm protecting myself. What I couldn't do then, I'm going to do now. Because even when I go back to my, hometown, I'm always thinking of, there's anxiety like, okay, what if I go there and I bump into, okay, so what do I do? And I'm like, Chris Natha, take a breath. You're going to go and enjoy yourself. And if this happens, you'll do this. And if that happens, this. So it's like I have to always have this conversation with myself. But no, plans are good. You have to
Yeah.
protect your peace. And that looks differently for all of us.
That's it. Protect, and you have to look at it like that. That is not being childish. You're protecting your peace.
Hmm.
This is helping you, as well as you, like you said, helping you and helping others, helping your family members, whoever the case may be, helping you in that situation. Because like you said, it could, you don't know, these emotions might come up, next thing you know.
You're absolutely right. And because sometimes you're like, oh, I really like acted a whole mess. But when you ask the people in your life to help you, like, hey, listen, I need you to help protect me in the scenario, and they think, oh, you're being dramatic, they don't want to assist you with the plan, then you're like, okay, I have to do whatever it takes to keep me safe. And if that is removing myself, whether y'all think that's too much or not, then I have to do that because I asked you. So if I'm asking you, hey, mom, I need you to make sure this person doesn't come around. Mom, you can't argue with me about this. I've asked you to do something for me. Respect what I'm asking. Oh, well, you're just okay, it's fine. I'll leave. Have a good time. I'll come back when this is over. And yeah, they're gonna say you're being, oh my gosh, why are you doing? I gotta listen, it's either this or I cut up at the dinner. I don't want to do that. Let
Right.
me not be here.
And you know what? That just goes back to that guilty conversation, because what if you do have people that that say stuff to you, and then you're like, well, don't try to make me feel guilty for this. This is how I want to. This is how I want to conduct the situation right now. But it
Hmm.
goes back to that guilty, that feeling. So they're like trying to tug on, oh well, you're being inconsiderate, or try to
You're
make
the
you feel
troublemaker.
you're the troublemaker. Yes, that's
And
Go ahead.
it's not fair. It's not fair. And all you're trying to do is create a space where you feel safe. That's
Yeah,
it. Nobody should have to be super uncomfortable. Now, if you need some skills in terms of, okay, what do I do when I'm, around people, you may have to, go see someone and get some tools, right? But you have to be safe.
yeah,
That's important.
that's important.
Hmm.
I actually, that's where I want to close out, because that is, having a plan is something that I've had to do, and I think that's huge. Having a plan and prepping your heart for forgiveness, I think that is huge, because,
Yeah.
and you may be always, everyone watching, you're gonna be in a constant state of prepping your heart. Like you said, you may be fine right now, and then 6 months later something else might happen, and you're like, ooh, this makes me so mad. You're going to have to, go back into that prep mode, and have to go back into that self-talk mode. I think that is important for us to talk to ourselves out loud. We're not crazy. Go ahead.
I just want to add something. I know when we talked about forgiveness, for everyone watching, we talked about it in such a grand way, like a traumatic way. There are people who are in a relationship with people and you are holding grudges.
Yes.
Marriage, fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend. You cannot grow. Either y'all gonna figure this out or y'all not. Okay, so let me tell you something. If you want to be in a long lasting, loving relationship, it's not perfect, but get ready to forgive a lot. So no more keeping score. No more, I'm a better partner than you are. Whatever issues you have, you got to come to a common ground or get a third party to help you guys. But you have to be ready to forgive a lot. So you also have to do the work of keeping your heart in a space where you have to continuously forgive, forgive. Doesn't mean you forget, but you can't keep score. You have to keep forgiving, and so that you guys can press forward and have a successful relationship. I just wanted to throw that in there.
I appreciate that you did, because, and I didn't, I really, like we said in the beginning, we wanted to keep the conversation light, but then we went down this path.
Yeah.
But you're right. Marriage and relationships are difficult, they're not easy. And if you thought that it was going to be just like, oh, everything's going to be great, we're going to compromise, I'm just going to be okay with everything, and you're not, it's not going to, it's not that way. So it's also a state of selflessness. You have to be selfless and considerate of somebody else. So that's a difficult situation to be in. So I appreciate that you just said, be ready to forgive and be ready to have those hard conversations. Go ahead.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is so important, especially dealing with relationships, dealing with, like, dealing with the opposites. And I want to say the word dealing with, but getting to know yourself while getting to know the opposite sex. Like, we're still getting to know ourselves and what
Hmm.
are those triggers. Especially if you've been through certain things, you're going to be in a state of forgiving, um, constant state of forgiving yourself, forgiving somebody else if you want something to work. I absolutely, and that's what I said. It's not just about childhood trauma. Forgiveness is not just about that. It's like I said, it could be somebody might have stole something from you. You can't hold on to those grudges. You can't hold on to those grudges, because they'll go to sleep with you at night. They wake up with you in the morning.
Hmm.
You don't want your anger to be sitting down with you having a cup of coffee. You need to you need to heal from that. You need to lift that, because that burden's going to carry on with you everywhere. Yeah. So that's huge. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you have to end with it? Because, I'm glad you ended with that. That's great.
Oh no, absolutely, my pleasure.
Your
But no,
book.
oh yes. Well, I have more than one book. I have a book called Through the Eyes of the King. Seeing Yourself the Way God Sees You. You can get that on Amazon Kindle. I also have on Amazon The Makings of a Masterpiece. That is on Amazon as well. And so it talks about just going through life, right? Just the fact that we are all God's masterpiece, but we are not perfect. And God gets to take us just as we are, use us for his glory, and really make our lives beautiful, right? Not perfect, but beautiful, even with whatever past that we have. So I do have those books that are available on Amazon. You can search them. Just type in Chris Nathan DeRozier and I'm sure you'll find them. And also, I'm a certified life coach. I work specifically with women. I'm a speaker as well, but I work specifically with women, helping them gain confidence and also goal setting skills in their life and in their business. So that's the work that I do.
Yeah, everyone, I just put her books in the chat, Through the Eyes of the King, Through the Eyes of the King,
Yes,
and The Making of a Masterpiece on Amazon. I'm sorry, I should have had the link. I don't have the link, but
no
I will put
worries.
that in the description. Man, this was great. Please, everyone, subscribe to my channel. And I'm going to be having more shows on the men's panels coming up. And I'm going to be talking about, um, we're going to be talking about submission. And, us and these gentlemen, we we'll start there, but we might veer off into something else. So, what does submission look like to them? And then I'm going to be talking about, I think I'm going to be doing a show on being an alpha female in a relationship. That's going to be interesting too.
That's going to be interesting.
So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Chris Natha. Uh,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Hold on.